you should think twice before getting into software engineering. It's probably not what you've been misled to believe. And unfortunately, sentiments like, well, if you can shovel coal into a furnace, you can learn how to program, also haven't helped. In my 23 plus years in tech, I've seen a lot of things. I've worked through 3 recessions. I've seen booms and busts. I've seen technologies come and go. I'm actually on my 16th tech job right now, so I've personally experienced the volatility in this industry. So that puts me in a pretty good position to help you decide on your next steps moving into engineering or an engineering related field. I'm going to do that by one, we're going to discuss what is the day-to-day actually like working in engineering or related field. 2, the meta discussion around the industry itself. So what is it like to have a career longer term in technology? And then the third thing is kind of the changing landscape in general. And this is where I'm going to get into AI and my take on what I think AI's impact on tech jobs will be. So about 8 years ago, I remember this very clearly. I was kind of struggling a bit in my life. I didn't really know why. And I remember pounding coffees one morning, talking with a friend and literally feeling no effect of the caffeine whatsoever. And I realized in that moment that something actually physically was wrong with me, that if I'm crushing these coffees, it should at least give me some sort of a jolt. And that's when I realized after research that I was actually clinically burned out. When we talk about what engineering is like, we have to kind of talk about burnout because frankly, it is a hard job and you have to very intentionally kind of protect yourself from all of the pressures that are put on you as an engineer. So a couple things that often lead to burnout in engineering and related fields. One is, I don't know if this is really any different for engineering than it is for other fields, but when you have a job, there's an expectation of delivery. We need to get things done. We need to be productive. In software engineering, often what's going to happen is unknown. We don't really know how to design something. We don't know what we're going to run into. So this aspect of the role has been particularly challenging for me, and I know for a lot of other engineers, where we can't really predict what's going to happen. And oftentimes what that means is we have to get into this death march. If you've heard of this before, we have to deliver no matter what. So that just means longer and longer hours, cutting corners to make a delivery. If you're going to be in tech, you have to understand the companies don't really get software development. They don't understand complexity and how to manage it. They tend to manage it like they would a construction project. And you have to kind of accept that fact and somewhat detach yourself from it. Another challenge is the expectations for engagement with your team members, with other people in the organization, when really our role as an engineer and a sort of creative requires a lot of deep thinking work, kind of being left alone to do your job. But companies for the most part, expect you to be engaged with what's going on. So lots of meetings, lots of planning, lots of sort of forced fun interactions. Oftentimes in some companies, you might only have an hour or two a day where you actually can do some coding. So prepare for learning how to do time management pretty well, learning how to carve out those chunks of time to protect your creativity. Sort of related to that, coding is actually a small percentage of your day as an engineer, especially when you're in actual engineering. Your time spent hands-on keyboard is less than you would think, especially as you sort of progress in your career. You're going to be more involved in more of the design and architecture activities. You're going to be doing more mentoring of more junior folks. So that's why it's called software engineer, not coder or programmer. That, programming is an activity of a software engineer, but it isn't the full job. Like I said, especially as you move up in the hierarchy a little bit. Something else to expect in a day-to-day is, related to coding not being a large percentage of your day. Writing new code is going to be an even smaller percentage of your day. Most of us in engineering, we spend our time in legacy systems versus writing something new from scratch. So it's a lot of debugging. It's a lot of digging into an existing code base. The code is going to suck. It's not going to be properly tested or designed. And a lot of people really kind of take that as a challenge and enjoy that sleuthing. It's almost like you're a detective. I actually am one of those people that enjoy, give me a hard bug to solve, and I find it enjoyable. but it's not writing new code. So just, expect that the job is messy. You're going to be in older code bases with outdated technology. A lot of the work you're going to be doing is upgrading, moving packages off of deprecated versions, migrating to new databases, and all of the scripting and all of the stuff that is involved with that, new operating systems, moving from data centers to the cloud. So a lot of it is mechanical and infrastructure in nature. It's not actually hands-on keyboard coding. And it's not all bad. I mean, honestly, I really enjoy being a software engineer as a whole, but you have to kind of take these things into mind. And when you can accept those things about the job, it becomes more enjoyable as well. So there's a lot of good to it. It's challenging. It really scratches the itch if you're a kind of a creative person, or you enjoy puzzle solving, or if you find yourself just bored often. Easily bored. You're not going to be bored as a software engineer. There's always new problems, new challenges, new technologies to learn, new patterns. On top of that, I've gained some of my best friends and the people I respect most in my life I've met at work. And what I've noticed is I just end up working with a lot of smart, really hardworking people when I'm in product engineering teams. I have a lot of really good professional relationships from that time. So to summarize on the day-to-day, really, if you're somebody who is really intrinsically motivated by problem solving, constant learning, like really using your brain very actively to, like I said, solve problems, dig into issues, you're probably going to be fine with that. And also somebody who's collaborative and who can work well with others. I would say if you've been drawn to technology solely for the purpose of making more money, you might want to think about this some more. Now, wanting to make more money is a perfectly valid reason to get into tech. Just know that there is a reason why people in technology make the money they do, because it is a very challenging job. So just kind of keep that in mind. Before I move on to the next topic here in just a few seconds, if you have any additional questions about what it's actually like in the day-to-day as an engineer or in related fields, or if you want to add to what I've already laid out here, add that into comments. I would love to see that, and it could help other people. And I read and respond to every comment, so that would be really appreciated. So another personal story, you can tell me if this is relatable or not. So I was bartending, working as a waiter and a caterer. So working, 50 plus hours a week, paying bills, sitting on a good deal of education and a number of years of experience as a software engineer. Nights working on learning a new web framework, working towards a certification, sending out resumes, applying just for months and months and months and not hearing anything back. Occasional first round interview. After about 9 months, finally landing a job. You might be thinking I'm talking about this recent round of layoffs, but actually this was in the year 2003. Into 2004. So this was after I graduated college with a computer engineering degree plus 2 years experience, and it took me 9 months to find a job. So the point of this story is that was 20 years ago. This whole thing of where it's hard to find jobs, it's not a new thing, and this won't be the last tough job market we experience in the tech industry. What to expect having a tech career is volatility. So there's going to be booms and busts. It's the nature of this field is there's bubbles and the bubbles deflate. So I've actually been laid off 3 times and survived 3 other layoffs. So that's 6 layoffs over the course of 23 years. Because of this volatility and frequent change, this is something you need to expect and plan for. And if you want to have a long career in engineering, is expect to be laid off at some point. I think everybody will probably go through it eventually. Also expect to possibly find yourself nearing or getting stuck in an old technology where there's not a lot of demand for it anymore, or it's super niche, where you have to really double down and kind of like get a second education, reteach yourself a new stack. It's just the way it goes in tech. It's not like being an electrician or something, where you can kind of be an electrician and retire as an electrician with basically the same skills you developed 30 years prior. In technology, you're constantly learning and even along the way, reinventing yourself. Another important point to consider, especially for aspiring engineers, is that FAANG does not equate to the tech industry. So the big tech companies, Meta, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, some other ones, they only employ a very small percentage of all software engineers. And so my back of the napkin math, there's about 150,000 engineers at the FAANG companies, which is a whopping 3.75% of all the total engineers, which there are 4 million in the US. Engineers and related like InfoSec, stuff like that. With so few engineers, why do they dominate the news? And I think what's happened is this has colored the perception of what it's like to work in tech for aspiring engineers. And it's why we've seen a literal explosion of computer science graduates and tech boot campers, because the Googles of the world, you could go to a 3-month boot camp and they'd hire you on at $150,000 a year with no real experience and not even really being an engineer yet. They'll train you on the job. You get free lunches. There's no real expectation of you having to, work a full day. And you're really pampered. Now what that's done is there's a huge supply of early career talent in the market right now because of that misperception. 3.75%. So there's all these other engineers out here that they're having different experiences. It's not like what you see from the Google Day in the Life videos. On top of this, most of what aspiring engineers see when it comes to being a software engineer is I'll call it the software as a service, where it's a web or mobile application, and that type of development. So my other back of the napkin math I wanted to share with you, out of this 4 million, engineers, only about half of them are considered front end, back end, or full stack. And so in this application development space, so there's only half are even doing SaaS type stuff. You're probably only getting a small picture of what it's actually like to work in tech. A couple other last points I want to make about the industry as a whole. Outsourcing is currently a trend, and that's not going to go away either. Engineers are really expensive. Companies are always going to be looking for ways to do more with less, and outsourcing was sort of a promise of being able to basically have more engineers for cheaper. What's happening at a global scale is that access to these skill sets, the education to learn these skills, is becoming much more widespread, more democratized. So there's just more competition globally. So I was on a team as a software engineer. Believe it or not, I was kind of the diversity hire as a white male American. And what I saw from these other awesome engineers I was working with, and they were from different geographies, from India and other parts of the Middle East, I was way out of my league with these people. They had tons of education, tons of experience, were just really good at their jobs. So while it was intimidating, it was also a good wake-up call for me that I needed to kind of spend more time leveling up so that I could basically keep up with the global talent competition. So, and kind of related to this is the tech industry as a whole. It is very heavily male dominated. It's completely bizarre to me why this is. It makes no sense to me at all. What I think I've been seeing more of, unfortunately, is kind of this like reemergence almost of a tech bro culture, almost like a frat type environment. And you see it on Reddit a lot. There's also a couple of very big name YouTubers who I think kind of represent that demographic. Even me as a male, but kind of being in the older generation, I'm really kind of turned off by that frat boy style of software development. That's not everywhere. It is a lot on social media. This is something that I'm actually very passionate about being a part of resolving and just creating a safer place for everybody, regardless of gender or background. But just know that, especially if you're not a non-male, you're most likely going to be a minority on your team. So all that talk of change leads us to the third thing that I want to talk about, which is the changing landscape. So this is really where I want to talk about AI. But before I talk about AI and my take on it, I wanted to do a little thought exercise here. So I'm going to list off some job titles: front-end engineer, back-end engineer, full-stack engineer, iOS developer, SRE, cloud architect, InfoSec engineer, DevOps engineer, data scientist, UX designer, machine learning engineer, data engineer, AI researcher, BI developer, agile coach, scrum master, automation engineer. None of those job titles existed when I graduated college in 2003. So the point I'm trying to make here is that as the body of knowledge grows in our industry, the overall complexity grows, the more specialization we see. And we see the same thing like with medicine. 50 years ago, there wasn't podiatrist or whatever, a specific doctor for a specific body part. So we're seeing the same thing happening in technology. So it's important to have that historical context, especially for aspiring engineers, when we talk about AI, because AI may be your first exposure to something that's majorly disruptive. But as I've just demonstrated, there's whole new fields that have kind of spun up in the last 20 years. So the first point I want to make about AI is essentially to not fear disruption. So sometimes it happens very suddenly. If you think about the iPhone, for example, a lot of us in the industry at the time were like, oh crap, we need to go rapidly reskill and relearn a whole new platform. It's the same thing with AI. You can fear it all you want, but that doesn't change the fact that the change is coming. So learn as much as you can about it. The second thing about AI, especially if you're new to the industry or aspiring engineer, is don't get sucked into this hype. This hype cycle is the craziest that I've ever seen in my 23 years. Just look at where the hype is coming from. It is people that have a vested interest in making money from AI. They really can't be trusted. They're trying to sell you something. Kind of the most devious example that I've seen of this is Devin, the world's first AI software engineer. And it's a cool tool. It has, what I think is how AI will be continue to be rolled out, not just a pure large language model, but multiple agents and different ways of interfacing using the LLM in a workflow. But it is not an AI software developer. Hopefully you can understand after this video, being a software engineer, there's so much more involved with actually building production-ready applications that can be used at scale and to drive a profitable business. It was a flat-out lie. Not only that, but their demo was faked. ChatGPT 4.0, which the demo was also really cool. It was like a human having a real-time conversation with ChatGPT, like with video and audio. Well, guess what? That was also faked. It was not real. And it still hasn't been released months after the demo. So it literally was just trying to generate hype. The most recent one I saw was Andy Jassy tweeting about his product, Amazon Q, I think it's called. And in his tweet, he makes a claim that he has saved, using Amazon Q, 4,500 developer years of effort from the CEO of the company who's trying to sell you the tool. So why would you just take that at face value? Don't take it at face value. When I went and researched this, I actually found on Reddit actual Amazon engineers, anonymous, saying how trash Amazon Q was and how when they went through this whole effort that saved all these hours, they were using like a ton of other AI tools as well. So, and don't forget, Amazon is the same company that had the Amazon store, their grab and go store, where you just walk into a store and take off the shelf what you wanted, put it in your cart and walk out, and they would charge you. And it was all done with cameras and all this AI and automation. It was actually human beings on the back end of that watching you shop and adding stuff to your cart as you went. So it was really just a giant proof of concept, but they just completely lied to you about it. These companies there's no disincentive for lying. They don't have to tell you the truth. All they care about is being first. Google has been faking demos ever since ChatGPT came out. They're rushing stuff to market with false claims. Unfortunately, what I think this is doing is it's starting to numb people to the actual value of AI and the actual paradigm shift that is coming. And that's kind of the next thing I wanted to talk about. So Google recently released a white paper and a study that they did where they had generative AI create the video game Doom on the fly. So the game itself was being run by the neural net. This is really the main paradigm shift that is coming that probably has a lot of engineers scared a little bit because it is generating the game on the fly. It is what's, quote, writing the code. A human being did not sit down and type out the code, all the if statements to generate the game, and then a person plays it. It's being generated by the AI's brain itself. And so the paradigm shift that is coming, and I believe that this will happen. The whole idea of an application, of a software application, a video game, a mobile app, your banking app on your phone, eventually will be moved into the neural net, where LLMs plus all the agentic frameworks and things that go around it will be powerful enough where you say, I need to make my house payment, and it will just go do that. Or even crazier, I want an open world video game where, set in the 1800s, Civil War era, and you give it the specifications and it can generate and then run that game for you. So it's specific to you. The computer itself becomes basically an interface into the AI, and it is generating and running all of those applications for you. So it sounds like science fiction, but I do think that is the main paradigm shift that is coming. So bringing it back to how does this affect aspiring software engineers? Is it even worth going into software engineering because the AIs are going to be writing all the code anyway? The AIs are starting to get pretty good at writing code. It's not you, it's not an engineer, it's just making you better, which we've been building tools to write code faster and better since we've been writing code. That's just less of the crappy, tedious work that humans don't want to do, which is what we have been automating away since humanity began. So to summarize this, because literally this could go on for multiple videos, yes, a paradigm shift is coming, I believe. I think it will happen over a long enough time period for software engineers to adapt, for us to be able to pivot, to be able to learn. So that's the one piece. The other piece is I don't think it's going to wholesale take over software engineering jobs, but I do think coding will become less and less of a software engineer's job that we do on the keyboard. Whatever you happen to be in your aspiring engineering phase, I would personally not trust the computer science programs to be able to keep up with this. I would also not trust the boot camp programs to be able to keep up with this. It very well could be that in 2 years, people don't really need to build web front-end applications anymore. The tooling might get to where a person basically uses the AI tools. They use Figma to generate React applications. That said, all that means is you just need to be in the driver's seat of your education a lot more than you may have had to in the past, that I probably had to in the past, because of how fast AI is changing things. For the right type of person, it can be really like an exciting time to go into engineering. Do you enjoy problem solving and debugging kind of at a really deep level? Are you really detail oriented, continuous learning and being adaptable? Do you thrive with uncertainty, or do you really like to have predictability? Can you work kind of self-directed? Can you take initiative with your day-to-day, but also with your career? To make pivots if you need to stay employed and stay relevant. As far as the grindy work, some of the tasks are repetitive, digging through old spaghetti code, kind of rolling up your sleeves and doing the dirty work of engineering. That's a big part of the job. If that doesn't scare you off too much, then it's a job, right? It's also work. Working with people, with teams, being very collaborative. If you're not in it just for the money, where the money is a motivating factor, but isn't going to be what carries you through your career longer term. So then, yeah, I say go for it. Yes, even somebody who was shoveling coal into a furnace can be a software engineer if they have some of these traits and the drive to learn and to do it. I think anybody can really do it. And if you are out there looking for a software engineering job, you may want to check out this video where I detail exactly how I used LinkedIn to get more interviews than I could actually even take. I had to turn down interviews using some of these techniques, so it can help you with your job search as well. So really appreciate you this far. And just remember, just because the software industry is broken doesn't mean that we have to be. Thanks a lot. I'll see you in the next one, hopefully.